So I watched these people. They were having sex in the grotto, and security guard comes up, and I was like, "Oh, they're about to kick these motherfuckers out." And they're like, "Hey guys, could you guys go a little further inside real quick while you're having sex in the grotto?" They didn't say shit to them. Can you talk about before they shut it down what your experiences were like? Because I try to describe it to people, but it's hard. It's hard to describe.
Man, so the Playboy Mansion, I started going there in 2006. So
Okay.
that was when they were filming Girls Next Door,
Yeah.
and and it was still like a big TV show. I was kind of in a fortunate position because at the time I was married, so I was like, I was not in party mode. I'm not a partier now, even,
Yeah.
but at the time I was like, I'm basically here for the food, you know?
Yeah.
So I somehow found my way into going to the mansion. I think I just begged somebody in Chicago to ask have or whatever, and they let me go to one of the Halloween parties. And I wrote the woman that ran the guest list just this nicest letter.
Yeah.
And I think she put me on their main guest list because no one's nice to her. Everyone was like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I only contact you when I need you. And instead, I'd sent her this nice letter about how life changing it was. And she was like, you can come anytime. So I did. And I would go up there for like fun in the sun and like movie nights and things like that. So I really got to experience like the big parties and the
What were
small
the
ones.
movie nights like? Those are like pretty historic.
Yeah, so on Sundays they would show like a new movie. On Friday nights they would show an old movie. I only went to one of the old movies, but on Sundays they would often have like the actors come from the movie
Oh
to like
wow.
introduce it. Yeah, so I got to experience that a few times where like big actors came in, and then Hef would always read something before, like talk about the historic whatever. It was very cute, and the girls would all sit on the floor on like little bean bags in the front, and he did
Was this
have
out in the backyard where you
no,
did
no,
this?
no, it
Oh.
was in the theater.
Oh, the theater. Okay.
Yeah, and he had a lot of celebrity friends, but like some were cooler than others. Like Corey Feldman was always there. Like
Yeah.
he didn't miss a Sunday.
Shout out to Corey Feldman, who comes
Yeah.
to every Babes in Toyland as well. I see him there all the time. Yeah.
And John Lovitz was there a lot, and
Okay.
he was absolutely a doll, so sweet.
I see. I would see Bill Maher and who's the other guy? Pauly Shore. Pretty
I
frequently.
saw Bill Maher and Pauly Shore at most of the parties,
Yeah.
but I did not see them at like Fun in the
Okay,
Sun
got it.
or the movie nights. But Corey Feldman was there a lot, and John Lovitz was there frequently. And there was a lot of other people, like All the Way Ray. Did you ever meet him?
No.
He was in the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, I believe, and he was one of Hef's best friends. He's like in his 90s. I think he's still alive. Or he might even be 100 now. But he was really funny. He was elderly and had a lot of energy, but he'd go around pinching girls' butts, and if they get upset, he'd just pretend he was like not
That's
mentally with it.
Man, there is just a different time, bro. It
Yeah.
was a different, isn't it crazy? Like when you
Yeah.
think about like how many things have changed. I believe so. In December of '53, when he buys the rights to those photos, so it wasn't a pictorial for Marilyn Monroe. I believe what happened is somebody else had taken nude photos.
Yeah.
He bought the rights to those photos, and then she did an interview for that. I think she did with her permission. She did the December '53
I
issue.
don't know if she did an interview or not.
Did she? Okay.
I don't think she did,
Okay.
but I believe that almost all their pictures for at least the first year were all stock images.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was the editor at Vogue before that. I believe that's what happened before he
I don't think it was Vogue, but I can't remember what
Esquire,
it was.
Esquire.
Yeah,
He was the
that's-
editor at Esquire before he moved
Yeah.
over and started his own his own brand, Playboy. Yeah, it's just really interesting. I read some stories. Like very controversial. You know, when you think about what happened, it was a very different time, but it created a lifestyle, and so many women wanted to be in that scene and part of that lifestyle. And it was so crazy going in there because I watched, with the girls next door. I think the mansion had its height of popularity when that show was coming out. And Kendra Wilkinson was sitting there with 3-6 Mafia, like rapping and all that kind of stuff that was going on. And then the other house where my friend Crystal Hefner was living in that other house. And it was just, it's an interesting time.
Yeah, Playboy has really gone like in and out of waves. Like they had huge success initially, and then they had a TV show, I think in the late 50s or
Yeah.
early 60s called like Playboy After Dark, something like that. That was big, and then they kind of, they basically coasted for a long time, and then they opened the clubs, and that shot them up, and then they took an illegal bribe in New York, and it made them lose their liquor license, and then all their clubs shut down,
Yeah.
and they almost went bankrupt. So they've been on a lot of waves. Unfortunately, now I'm like they barely exist, which is sad to me because it is one of the most recognizable brands in the
Yeah.
world. And if it was marketed correctly, I think it could do very, very well still.
Yeah, it's interesting. So they bought Yandy, and now, they may have created Yandy. I'm not sure. And then their lingerie stuff they do over Yandy. Yandy was the sponsor for the $130,000 bikini competition I did at
Oh,
Wet
cool.
Republic. So the first prize was 20 grand, and that came from Yandy. And then first prize won a Yandy photo shoot. Or a modeling contract with Yandy
Oh,
after that
that's
whole
cool.
thing happened. Any crazy stuff that you saw when you were at the mansion?
Oh, I know that stuff goes on there, but I didn't see too much insanity. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of a good story and nothing's going to come to mind. I met a lot of interesting celebrities. And
You,
I
you,
saw
you,
Backstreet Boy getting it on in the grotto once,
okay,
but
yeah. So you also mentioned a former musician was trying to dance with you on the
oh my
dance floor.
gosh, yeah, yeah. So a kind of washed up rock star was trying to grind on me on the dance floor once, and it was so awkward because I'm trying to like nice.
I'll blink it out if you say his name because I have a guess who it is. But keep going.
Oh, okay. It was
Okay.
yeah, and anyway, he's like trying to dance on me, and I'm just like, oh God, what do I do? Oh God, what do I do? And as I'm trying to just back away, the DJ starts playing one of his songs, thinking he's helping him out. And it just makes it so much worse because he's like way too into it. Like he's like biting his lip and like, and I start laughing uncontrollably. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I gotta go.
Yeah, it's really interesting that part of Hollywood. I've noticed that a lot of guys who are super rich or famous at one point, they kind of miss the steps in order to develop a normal personality or an ability to talk to women in a normal way. And they're
Yeah.
just like, I'm famous. You can come here now. And like when the fame goes away, they never develop the ability. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then they're older, they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And they're trying to do the same thing they did when their movie came out in the 90s
Right.
or whatever, and it just doesn't work out the same way.
Yeah.
And it comes off as, like a little bit awkward. Whereas if they had been like poor at one point or just a normal person for a significant part of their life instead of being famous in their 20s, they probably wouldn't be like that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that whenever I talk to people who were poor once and then became wealthy, they tend to like be a little easier to deal with than people who were just like very, very
Yeah.
wealthy very soon, very early on. The other thing is, so for me, I was a couple things. There's the game room, and I think there's one or two bedrooms that are like hidden in that wall. You know what I'm talking about in
Yeah.
the game room? I saw a girl bring her boyfriend in there because it was like, we're going to have sex at the Playboy Mansion, right? I saw
Okay.
that just drag him in there.
Yeah.
In the grotto, you see a bunch of people having sex. It's really warm in there too. I think they heat that part of the.
Yeah, so a bunch of people actually got this disease there one year. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was like some disease you get in the lungs from like steam
chlorine?
and indoor
Yeah.
jacuzzis. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of germs in there.
Yeah, it was. I could smell the chlorine, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really warm. And I saw these people having sex in there, and I remember watching this. It was at the end
It's called
of the night.
Legionnaire's disease.
Legionnaires.
That's
Holy
what it
shit,
is.
that's a
Yeah.
big one. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is not a good one to get. That's not the fun one to get. So I watched these people. They were having sex in the grotto, and security guard comes up, and I was like, oh, they're about to kick these motherfuckers out. And they're like, hey guys, could you guys go a little further inside real quick while you're having sex in the grotto? They didn't say shit to them.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I didn't see a lot of sex there, surprisingly. And the few people I did, they were usually celebrity-ish,
Yeah.
so they just kind of left them alone. But I don't know. I felt like, I guess because I was there on Sundays when it was smaller, it felt very like wholesome.
Yeah.
But I was also there when Hef was like elderly.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of cameras around for the girls next door as well. So I think maybe people were keeping on like a good impression of everything.
I think when he starts this, or when they get popular in the 60s and 70s, I think people are more sexual and less exhibitionist, and I think now people are more of they want to display it more. There's tons of studies showing that people have less sex now than they did back then. Men especially, like 33% of men show having zero sexual partners in the last year. Right?
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I think with like the internet and phones, people's social abilities are really low.
Yeah, I think this generation now shows more, but is less likely to be in an orgy than in any generation. Do you understand
Okay.
what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
I feel like I know so many women who they're on OnlyFans doing crazy lascivious stuff in the
Hmm.
comfort of their own home, in the comfort of their own bedroom, with their husband filming it, right?
Right.
And then never go out. Never
Yeah.
go party. They don't snort a bunch of 2C. They're not fucked up in the VIP of a nightclub. That whole thing is gone. They're just at home, and I think
Hmm.
that part has changed significantly.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge difference. But yeah, I mean, I just remember that. I have a buddy of mine. He was a female friend of mine, and she was like, a guy asked her, "Is like, hey, do you want to go have sex in this room?" And she said no. And afterwards, being like, "I regret that." She's like, "I could have had sex in the Playboy Mansion, and I didn't do it." It was really a really interesting thing, man. Yeah, but I was just there for the parties.
Yeah.
That was a pretty crazy time. It really is interesting when you're walking around there and you just see this history, because the
Hmm.
house was built in like 1927, 1929, something like that.
Yeah.
But there were I remember it was Brody Jenner was the DJ that last
Hmm.
time. I was at there for the last Midsummer Night's Dream Party.
Okay.
It was just really interesting watching that.